Hello and welcome to a new episode of our Dinis Guarda citiesabc Open Business Council series. So today I welcome Sun Sanner, and I'm actually quite excited to welcome here, which is a person that I know for some time and that I really like, and I've been exchanging some beautiful moments, although with all COVID we are all a bit distant, but we are close. So Sun Sanner, she has a beautiful name, is a producer, PR, public speaker, and digital strategist. She's been focused on the future of work, most of her work, and as well thought leadership, and raising global consciousness, especially in the areas of social impact, business innovation, and as well how technologies can be applied in terms of society. She's based in London, and she's been working mostly in the bridge between agencies and PR and communications, and as well producer of events and producer of film series. She has an interesting experience and portfolio, and she's been working with the likes of CISCO, IBM, Accenture, and Tech-Connect. She's as well right now behind a branding PR podcast that is the Business First TV. That is something that we're going to be talking. She's as well a public speaker and flexipreneur, which I love the expression. And she's as well a current, I think probably in terms of high profile, the associate producer at the reality TV. I think the reality TV is probably not the name, but the right name, but is a series and philanthropy show that is the Social Movement. That is a series produced by Amazon that is going to be released, a bit delayed because of COVID, but it's going to be released hopefully soon. And we're going to be talking about that as well. And on that quality, she's been a producer for the company behind the series, Red Knight Studios company. And she's been working as well and in all the different parts of production this. Previously, she was social media marketing manager at Rec Social, and she's been looking at the recruitment industry, all the different areas of B2B and how the industry works. And as well, before that, she worked as a UK social lead manager for Accenture. So welcome to our series, Sun.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me and inviting me on. I've been looking forward to this, so glad to finally be here.
No, it's my pleasure and honor. I'm quite excited as well. So you are quite unique because I think, first of all, your kind of work is more and more important for companies because most of the companies are becoming digital and they need more and more PR. They need as well all these relationships between different mediums, special television, or actually digital platforms like Amazon or Netflix or all the different mediums together. But I would like to start a bit about your background as well. You have as well family, you are a single mother that has been actually building a lot of different areas, but a bit of your background as well from the UK. How did you start your career, education, a bit of this kind of personal touch that is important to be or to make who you are right now.
Absolutely. So I actually studied culture and media studies, and this was at a time where media it was quite an unknown, so it didn't have much gravitas. So to say that you're studying culture and media, it didn't carry much weight. It was almost considered a Mickey Mouse degree, but I absolutely loved it. After working there, I worked briefly for a production company, which I really enjoyed, and we worked on projects, numerous projects. Probably the most known would be a show called 10 Years Younger, and that was great. I started as a researcher there, but there wasn't much money involved, and and probably like most 21-year-olds now, you're trying to work out how you can get onto the property ladder, and that didn't seem particularly feasible. At the time, my brother was working in recruitment and he seemed to be earning decent money. So I thought, okay, if I want to get on the property ladder, I'm going to try this route. So I worked in recruitment for almost 10 years. And, I absolutely loved that. It's a hard industry to be in. And from when I started to when I entered, the industry had changed so much. And by the end of it, there were 40,000 recruitment companies in the UK alone. And I had to start thinking, well, if you're 40,000 recruitment companies, how do you stand out? How do you stand out from any other company? And that's when I really thought I need to go back on my digital, ground roots and digital start and actually start implementing that. once I did that and started to see how successful that is because of how fewer companies were doing that, I thought, actually, this is something I really enjoy, I'm passionate about. It kind of gave me that spark again. And that's what brought and created Rec Social. So it was doing that for different recruitment companies. As that began to grow and I was starting to learn more about and looking into recruitment more, that's where the passion for the future of work developed. And actually seeing if the industry has changed this much, well, where will it be in 5 years' time? Where will it be in 10 years' time? What do we need to prepare for? Because I'd never seen an industry change so quickly. And I think from there, I ended up, I'm so grateful for, running campaigns for the likes of CISCO and working on the IBM Watson project, and that was incredibly exciting, and helping them bridge the gap between social media and using video marketing. And I think as I went along, I was speaking to all these different companies and just learning so much, and a lot of them were coming up with the same narrative, and you start to really look at things on a bigger scale, on a global scale, and seeing how things are changing and things are moving. And that's actually when I was in contact with Chris Lavoie and learned what he was doing with this project called the Social Movement. And that was looking at actually, how could we be business of impact and think about sustainable business and think about businesses that are really making a difference and that will really be paving a better future. And the concept of this show was incredibly exciting. And that's what led to what you had just discussed previously about the Amazon Prime show called The Social Movement. So that's kind of my trajectory to now.
Summary, very, very good, very summary and very powerful. And this is quite impressive as well, because I didn't have a clue that there were 40,000 recruitment companies alone in the UK, which is a very big, it's a massive market. And of course, the UK is a hub for the rest of the world. So let's start with that. I'm particularly interested, before we go to the Amazon and the social movement, which is quite exciting as well. So from this experience in terms of working recruitment and starting a career on that area, how do you see, because of course we are among COVID-19, there's a lot of things happening, and the work as, even if you would just talk 1 year ago, or 1 year ago, no, but 2 years ago, no one would probably visualize what is happening now, that everyone is working worldwide from home. And this actually is the first time probably in history that we are all remotely working, thanks to technology and digital tools. And actually the economy is still going, even if there's a lot of damaging, especially for industries that need face-to-face interaction. But a bit of that kind of experience working with recruitment, to the point of that evolution in the last 10 years, which mostly we went, like you mentioned, from digital become the forefront of everything. But as well, right now we're talking about much more acceleration, probably much more disruption. So how do you see the future of work now?
How do I see the future of work now? Far more automation. I think even as COVID-19, even as, these restrictions lift, the workplace as we know it will not be the same. I think a lot of companies will choose to continue to work remotely, and there's a lot of pros and cons to this, but it is something that we had seen coming, and it was starting to be implemented. But I know a lot of recruitment companies still didn't quite believe that you could have a successful work culture whilst working remotely, especially for a sales environment. And I think this time, and having a year to actually implement that and change your managerial techniques and change how you're motivating your team and how you're communicating and everything, it's actually forced them into a practical where they've had to adjust and adapt. And actually the plus side is seeing that it is very much doable, that you can work remotely. And then from a business perspective, again, it saves on a lot of overheads, and I can't see why as many companies, if they don't need to, will be keeping, a place in London and an office here and an office there. What used to be considered a real company perk and something exciting about where your offices are, even that's changed now. It's more, what are your work from home? Is that possible? How many days would I actually have to be in? You only need to look at the larger companies. They'd been doing this before then, but it's forced the small SMEs to follow suit and do this too. So I don't see once this is lifted as the typical 9 to 5 and the typical commute. I don't think that will be the same. And I also think, recruitment itself is changing. It's always been slow to change its culture. It has a reputation for being that way, so to try and encourage them to use digital was a stretch in itself, but also the way that people are recruiting. So the way that people are actually recruiting is changing, and they're going to use a lot of automation. There's a lot of ways to be able to bring that in-house now. So that whole outsourcing function and needing to use a recruiter won't be the same. And I do think that will really shrink the market. And the recruiters that will remain in those are the ones that can really keep that personal touch and who can really use their digital profile to still stay ahead and show that they exist. So they really need to change their offering. And that's coming into play as well. And that's really shaped how a lot of recruiters are working. Interviews, how people are interviewing has changed. So a lot of them are taking on video platforms and using video platforms, and candidates and how they're approaching candidates and finding candidates has changed. It's changed the recruitment market incredibly, and the companies that were prepared for this are really benefiting, and the ones that weren't prepared for this have had to change so much and need to change really quickly and pivot as fast as they can to still be relevant.
Yeah, this is key, and I completely subscribe what you said, but as well, there's a sense of urgency on this, and I think a lot of people are still panicking. So one of the questions I have, and I always try to be, of course, look at the problems, but firstly look more on the solutions. So although looking properly, the problem might find the solution. So as an expert in recruitment, and as well being or collaborating in all these areas of work and organizations, what would you consider your career highlights in particular? Because you're quite young, of course, but just to understand, I think especially how you've been adapting towards this change, because even like you said, from your studies, now makes completely sense what you mentioned, but at the time probably was not, and it's not so long time ago. So just how things are changing. And for instance, one of the things I always speak, I've been teaching in business schools and a lot of schools, and even with my children, is when they think about, okay, now we need this course. No, all the courses are going to be changing. You need more experience and having a frame to get your knowledge. So I want to touch on this because I know that is key, and you touched partly on this, but specific from your career, these adaptations, and as well for people listening to us, because I know that a lot of people is just are struggling, and especially in our moments. But at the same time, there's so much opportunities and tools that they're not using properly.
And there really are. And I think speaking to Colin Seaward, so he's a CIO for CISCO EMEA. And one of the things that he said, which really stuck with me, is the most important tool and skill you can have is the ability to continuously learn. And I think it's really important to share that with our children. We're no longer in a time where what you learn for your degree, or you can't just say that was the period in your life where you learned, and that will see you through to a career. It won't. You have to be used to. You need to learn how to adapt. You need to be open to continuously learning, continuously studying, and continuously changing and adapting your offering. And it needs to become part of your nature. So the best thing we can do for children is really feed that curiosity in them, really feed that passion in them, really get that passion going for them to learn, and not see it as a chore, but see it as something that's pivotal to their growth through their entire life. It's important. One thing that I'll refer back to CISCO, because they do a buddying system, which I think is so incredible. So you have obviously the youngsters that have just come out of university and they know all the latest technology and they've just learned the latest skills and adapted. And then you have the maturer people who have been in the industry and they may not know the latest technology, but they have built a plethora of expertise and experience over that 10 years. So they buddy them up. And it's really, really trying to showcase the wealth of knowledge that they can get by exchanging that knowledge. By, you teach me what you've just learned with this technology, I'll teach you how to survive in a workplace, and what managerial techniques I've learned, or how I've learned to collaborate well, and how I've learned to find myself within that environment. So that's one of the things that I think they need to do, and you need to do in the recruitment industry and in any industry now, is learn how to learn. There is nothing that I don't feel that you could study that would then just get you through. You've got to be prepared for that. So that would be the first thing. When it comes to recruitment specifically, get digital, because just before I started in recruitment, you were really looking at, you would find someone through Yellow Pages. You would call to phone, through Yellow Pages, see if they have a job, and then you would call around, and hope that a candidate would call you by placing an advert in a newspaper. We've adapted from that. We've always been doing it, but we're so quick to forget. The only difference now is we have to do it faster. So it's just accepting that. It's accepting that in your mind, that things are always going to be changing, and that you can change and adapt. You're never too old for it. And I think that's probably the bit of advice that I would pass on to anybody, really.
It's a fantastic advice. I think everyone should, and you put it very eloquently, but as well there's a sense of pressure, or a sense of urgency, and as well a sense of, if you don't do this, you have as well counterbalance that you get lost in everything happening around the world. So one of the things that you have, and one of the words that you have, is flexipreneur. I like that word, and I think it's particularly important to define, or at least to do what you just said before. But could you define this? Because I think, especially in your context as a single mother, and as well someone that is having a fantastic career, but as well keep a family, is not easy. And I know, especially for I think, for females, let's put it that way. I think I was trying to see how to say it in a more.
It's true. I'm female. Yes.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. No, but it's in the sense that it's really difficult to manage, especially right now that everyone is working from home. If you have children, so being a flexipreneur, first of all, is already challenging, because it's not easy, and you have to keep adapting, keep getting stability in terms of jobs, and you need to have a very strong ecosystem and network to survive. I would like to talk about this, because I admire a lot that, but especially in your case, I have more admiration, because it's the way you balance all these different things that makes successful possibilities around this. But everyone needs to become a flexipreneur as well. So I would like for you to elaborate on this.
A journalist coined the frame, and so I know that must, I think that's out in an article somewhere, and I can't remember her name, but she coined the frame flexipreneur. I hadn't heard it before, and she told me I was a flexipreneur. And yeah, so I always feel a bit coy when I hear that word. But yes, I guess I am, and I think it is. I think especially now, if I am a single mum, I have two amazing children. My son's 11 and my daughter's 10, and they are my absolute world. But in order to survive, I need to work as well. So I think you have to be incredibly flexible, but you also need to be very disciplined, and you also need to know how to prioritize. And you need to adjust that priority daily, dependent on what's on and what's not. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, to do, is to be able to say, okay, in this moment, I need to completely be focused on my children and what they need. And you can see it in them. They absolutely need you as a mother in that moment. And then there'll be other times when you need to be so focused on your project in order to kickstart it, get it moving, get it complete, be completely focused when you're on your meeting. You'll have, people will need answers, and they're relying on you, and you have to be able to commit to that as well. And the truth is, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. And I'd probably say the one thing that gets me through it is I don't try and be a martyr. I try and be easy on myself. I don't put ridiculous amounts of pressure on myself, because I think sometimes the thought of juggling everything is what can make you drop all the balls. Whereas if you just take each task one at a time as you're going along, take that pressure off, it makes it a lot easier. It's more mental than anything else. Also, I have a really good support system. So, I was married for just over a decade, but I'm still very close with the children's grandma who helps me out, and then my parents can help me out. I have a really strong friendship circle. So if I were to be late, coming back from London, I do have friends who I could call, and I know that my children, will be picked up. And that's something that not everybody has. So I can't sit here and say it's super easy and anybody can do it. You need to have that ecosystem in place. And that's why it works on, an individual basis. Not everybody has that. But I do feel because I have such a strong network around me, it makes it possible.
Yeah, no, I really admire that. And really, you touch one of the most important things that is really how we cope nowadays, particular all the challenges of, first of all, the velocity of change, and most of people just get lost in itself on that. But then you still have to keep a track record and a focus for family, especially if their children is involved. So this becomes a very complex stuff, and I think everyone in some ways is going through this. And I think,
and I mean, even as single fathers, I know quite a few, and they've still got very, demanding jobs, but Tuesday, Friday, their ex-partner works as well. They need to have the children whilst they're not at school at the moment, and they are struggling. Nobody's getting through, I don't think, is getting through this easily. I've had to, especially during COVID times, it's been incredibly difficult, and I think if you're being honest about it, I don't know anybody who would say otherwise, and it isn't, a lot does fall on women who work, and whether you have a partner or not, it does. But also there are a lot of single fathers out there, or fathers out there, who take the majority of childcare and have the same issues. It's a no-win situation right now. So if anything, just be easy on yourself, because it's not permanent.
No, I really appreciate that. I think that's a very important thing, a very good advice. I think take it easy, because I think every study, we are in the middle of the COVID-19, but things are not going to just disappear from one day to the other. And even when they disappear, which hopefully should be rather sooner than later, but it will take its time. Of course, there'll be consequences, and there will be a lot of adaptations, and but let's not go on that, because it's quite a complex subject, and as well, there's no, I think you put it very well and very eloquently, in the sense of how to deal with it, especially not put more pressure than you have already, the pressure naturally, but as well keep moving and keep focus. So that brings us as well to the work you're doing with as associate producer at Red Knight Studios company, and as the producer of The Social Movement. So I'll just read a bit about this, but I would like for you to elaborate. So The Social Movement is a documentary series by Christy Lavoie, that is the producer of the hit series Top Recruiter, that brings together CEOs in a reality show that through philanthropy will have 4 days to change the world. So that's kind of exactly what we're talking about. It's quite ambitious. And the show will feature 50 leaders that can solve social and economic issues that are harming the planet. I'm sure that now you had to redesign things, especially bearing in mind everything happening, because I know that the project has been going in gestation for at least a couple of years, 2 years probably for now. But this looks at inequality, access to healthcare, global warming, anger, and support for homeless people. So can you tell us about this? Because this is kind of the most important things in the world, and now more even important than before. It was already important before, but now becomes 10 times more important.
I think exactly. I think it was always important, but we were hearing whispers here and there, and it seemed like a nice to have. Obviously, since what's been going on in this year, people have realized there's far more urgency, and it's far more necessary. But the concept was birthed from that. It was birthed from, okay, we know we have a problem. We know we need a solution, but how do we get there? And we know that the quickest way to get there is through collaboration, is through a really big mind dump. So why don't we get the best minds together? Why don't we actually scour the globe and see who's doing what and bring them together to collaborate, to create something, to put it on a public platform? Because again, there's so many ideas out there, but because it doesn't have the exposure, it doesn't then get the investment, it doesn't get pushed into. It's a lot of these things are about working together, knowing the right people who can then push it a bit further. And you realize when you start to talk about these things and put them out in the media, you'll find another 10, 20, 30 companies that were actually doing something very similar, but you would never have known. But doing it this way, it means that it's basically waving a big flag and going, look, guys, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. If anybody else understands or can help me on this or knows how to push this further, get in touch. And that's what we're aiming to do, is we're aiming to create something, put it on a platform, the right people will see it, the right people will be talking about it, we'll be having the right conversations, and from then we can actually push something that will make a change. And then once you hear that, there's no way you're not going to be involved. You're just not, oh, I'm not interested in helping people, or, what do I care about this planet? And it was from that. I mean, as you can tell kind of by my journey, I'm driven by passion and curiosity and interest in making a difference. And rather than, very similar to you, rather than seeing a problem and saying we have a problem, I'd much prefer to put my energy into fixing the problem. And I feel that this show is at the heart of that. We all know that we have so many problems. We all know that a lot isn't working right now, but rather than put our energy there, what if we all got together and put that energy into actually solving it and actually creating a difference? And just from being a part of this, it's made me see the world in a better light, I would say, because you really start to see all the companies that are really trying to make a difference, on a global scale, what people are actually doing. My day-to-day is spent speaking to these companies, speaking to these people, and you can't help but be inspired, and you can't help but have hope. So a lot of good, I hope, will come from this. But that was the premise of the show. And yes, because of COVID-19, there were delays in production and delays of when, it's going to be released. But all we can hope, and I'm not even going to commit to a date just in case, but we do have a date in our mind, but I don't want to say it out loud. But all I can hope is 2021, we can really get this moving and really, really get this off the ground. And I feel it'll be something we can look back on and be very proud of. And hopefully, it will make a difference.
I want to talk just, if you can elaborate, I think this is particularly important because, of course, it's a very glamorous production and very, as well, of course, with a massive value for everyone. I think everyone understands the value of this, but just, I would like to elaborate of the challenge that you had presented with COVID and managing something like this, because it involves hundreds of people. It's Amazon Prime, so it's one of the biggest film producers and television producers in the world at the moment. So just a bit of this production backstage, because I think sometimes people only see the success, but not the difficulties of putting something like this, and especially putting something like this, like you just mentioned, among one of the most challenging periods in history. For us today, there was news, and we are in the beginning of February, that the UK, for instance, the economy receded to the worst point in 300 years. So this is really affecting everyone. So I just want to think, especially for people looking at us or listening to us that are facing difficulties, sometimes looking at how people are coping, how they manage these challenges. It's really important as well, even from a pragmatic, but as well from an inspirational perspective. And I know that you didn't give up, and you've been actually very active finding solutions and moving forward.
Yeah, it has. It's been, it was quite heartbreaking, if we're honest, because we had put so much effort into the fact that it's a global production, to be able to actually solidify set dates, times, agendas, that we could get all of these people from around the globe in the same place, committed to the same goal, that was a challenge in itself. But we had managed to get to that stage after multiple meetings at all times. At one stage, I was speaking to Australia in the morning, UK and during the day, America, the States at night. So it was some really long days trying to make sure that everybody was on board, everybody was getting the same message, and we were all working in the same direction, only for it to be completely stopped. And, that was it. A lot of people were incredibly, incredibly disappointed, and then trying to find a new time and reschedule and, you know, it's not just the production itself, it's everybody had set dates, there are a lot of people involved, and then, you know, you've got to look at your PR campaigns and your social campaigns and when they're going to be launched. So a lot of people were dependent on this project. So, you know, and these people all have households that they need to provide for, etc. So it's, you know, even if you're just looking at the logistics and just looking at it from numbers, once you realize that each one of those numbers is a person who has a livelihood and a life and everything else that they, you know, and they're trying to survive, you really realize how emotionally draining it can be when these things go wrong. But it's also the same reason why then you have to completely reset and just say, okay, what could I have done? You know, did I do everything that I could have done to make this work? Well, yes, I did. You know, is everybody going through the same things? Yes. You know, as you reach out, I haven't spoken to anybody in particular who I would say is absolutely, you know, coming through COVID, absolutely, you know, chipper. They might say they are, but everybody has suffered in one way or another, you know, we all have. So then you can't take it onto your shoulders and feel like it's your loss. All you can do is work out, okay, so when can I next do this? How can we next make this work? Because it doesn't stop the idea, the concept, what it could be. It doesn't make that any less. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it was incredibly difficult. And I mean, this is one of the things with, I think, we speak a lot about the symptoms of COVID-19. You know, you have a high temperature and you'll have respiratory issues, and, you know, it can be life-threatening, and it can, and you can't downplay that. It's severe, it's real. You know, we're in a global pandemic. There's also, you know, people who have started, you know, they have businesses that they are, you know, providing a livelihood for 40, 50 people, and they've spent years building, and that's been taken away from them. The emotional and mental and economical damage that's done to them independently. And like you said, you know, where we are at the moment, that also has such a huge impact on their lives, you know, and absolute long-term impact on their lives. And for those, you know, you really want to sit down and say, I get it. Like, I understand this is ridiculously hard times. You know, this is really bad, but I feel like they need to have a voice, and more things should be implemented for them to have a voice and a way of talking and a way of coping, and you know, some means to actually helping them build their future. And how we can go about that is something that I'm really interested in pushing forward, learning more about, and seeing what we can do there, because I do think they will need that support. And I do think we do have the capabilities of working ways to do that.
Yeah, very inspirational, and thank you for that. It's really very precious as well, because I think definitely there's some industries that are completely smashed by everything happening. And I think everyone, like you mentioned, has been affected, or physical, psychological, and of course, worst case scenario, health, or even people that died with this, which there was quite a lot of people as well. But so let's look at it. I know that particularly some industries like film and television have been probably massive affected, and although they're very glamorous, even music industries and so forth. So bearing in that you are in this and you are producing other things as well, so I would like just with this challenge of COVID-19, and I think everything you saw with the social movement, and I know that you've been producing other series and other things, what would be the lessons that you would like to share? And you touched some of the solutions, but as well, how do you see, because at the moment it's a bit thinking out of the box, and it comes back to the concept of flexipreneur, but as well, even in big industries, because you're talking about millions of dollars involved. In the case of, for instance, social movement, 50 companies. So 50 companies implies at least each of them with 10 to 20 or 50, and sometimes 100 people. So we're talking about thousands of people involved directly and indirectly. And as well, there's big budgets, big production that everything gets on hold. And we see, for instance, all the right now film industry that right now had to all come to the small screen because you cannot go to film. So I don't know, it's a broader question, but if you have some notes from your experience, and I know that you are still producing, I think on television, there's a lot of solutions, but concrete small things that you think are really useful for people listening to us, and as well for other producers listening to us, and that I'm sure they will want to learn and collaborate?
I think it's like anything. You can't be so attached to an idea or a concept. So if what you were so attached to, can't move forward, you need to start and take that time to look at, actually, what does this mean going forward, right? So COVID has stopped this from working now. But realistically, is there a likelihood that with how things are changing, if that was going to exist in 5 to 10 to 15, 20 years time at the same level anyway? And using this time to reskill, using this time to readjust, using this time to pivot, using this time to look at your own skills and think, okay, so I did this and I created that. Well, what else could I use the skills that I had to do that for? And it sounds so flippant and it sounds so easy, and I don't want it to seem that way, to think that it's so easy to just let go of everything, but I think in a lot of cases we have to. A lot of the industries that are affected, they won't be coming back in the same way. They won't, and this has happened in history before, and it's using this time to say it's tragic and it's a loss, but I now need to move forward and I need to look at a way to move forward. And I think you're right, like, I'm not old, but I started getting back into digital in my 30s when I had 2 children. And I could have thought, well, Instagram, Twitter, are for the teenagers, right? What am I going to be doing on there? I'm a mum. I'm in my 30s. I'm way past it. It's not for me. But I remember at that exact moment, I thought, if an 18-year-old can do it, of course I can, right? Why would I not be able to do it if somebody at that age can do it? And I will continue to think that way. I will continue to think, why could I not? Why can I not learn? Why have I said, oh, well, I can't change now? Or, well, that's not for me. Well, what got them there, Well, can I learn that? Can I do that? Can I change that? And I think, again, it comes back to that. It comes back to always understanding that it's a growth mindset, isn't it? We teach it to our children, but we call it's a growth mindset. And it sounds condescending, but it's understanding that if you've got yourself this far, you can always get yourself that much further. And it's just a hurdle. It's just a stumbling block, but it's happened. We need to face it. Things have changed. Okay, move on. You've got to be strong and you've got to move on, and you have to do it. And you have to just look at yourself. If you have gotten yourself to a point of success, you will always be able to do that again. You just have to remember what it was that gave you the motivation the first time. So that's what I would say. It's not easy, but it's a time to really test yourself. And they say, you learn the most about yourself when you're down. How you act and react when you're down is how you will really know who you are and what you're made of. So I guess this is your time. This is your time to really work out what you're made of,
Wonderful, very inspiring. I think you have an opera inside of you. so no, fantastic. No, and I really love what you said, because it's when you're down, effectively, actually there's a couple of words that I took notes here. And when you're down, you discover, I normally talk about failure, but when you're down is it when you see how can you get out of your hole and see how you can actually shine. So beautiful. So I know that you go into more positive, and then as well the strengths that you have, because you don't stop as well. So you're working right now in new projects, and I don't know if you can put some public, but just some of the things that you might want or not. Just those.
I actually don't think I can. I know we discussed some things, but I actually don't think I can talk about them just yet.
No worries. No, but I think let's then come back. I think we are passing close to an hour, so no worries. So I think, is there any other areas that you want to talk just from your work, or from some of the partnerships and collaborations that you want to do? Probably not on these projects, but other things more public that you.
Yeah, I mean, I love what I do. I think, I guess, well, what would be the key takeaways? So we spoke about continuous learning, we spoke about the importance of digital, the importance of creating your own digital footprint, the importance of marketing your company and what that looks like now. You know, I was speaking to someone yesterday and she made a very valid point, because she was saying, you know, we look at the BBC as broadcasters, but Facebook is a broadcaster, and Instagram is a broadcaster, and Twitter is a broadcaster. And when you see it like that and see, wow, I'm actually have the ability to broadcast exactly what I stand for, what I'm doing, and everything, and start to see it like that, and the power that you have. By creating your digital footprint, I think, you know, you start to respect it a lot more, and I'd love to see more businesses using that. And, you know, really, it's hard now where we stand to think that so many companies aren't, or they, you know, but they just adapt, change, you know, become digital. Yeah, and I guess that would be my main hope would be the main takeaway from this, and think forward. You know, as you're going along, just to keep thinking forward. We've never been evolving this quickly within the workplace, for example, and technology is evolving so quickly. So start thinking forward. You know, really start looking at any business you're going to go into, or that you are in. Where does this need to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years time, and start that now. So that would be it, I think. And if you are a single mom, yeah, it's really hard. Or if you're a single dad, it's really hard. And I'm not going to downplay that. Do not want to stand up here and say I'm Wonder Woman. No, it's very difficult. So well done for anybody who is doing it.
Wonderful. Well, you definitely are an inspiring woman. So thank you so much, San. It's been fantastic. I think there's a lot of things here that we took notes, and I think you mentioned as well, learn how to learn. I love that expression. It's actually very beautiful. And actually, I think all my former students and everyone should really reflect on that, because I think people tend to just, I think everyone tends to be a bit, people want stability, but stability is as well poison, because if you get too stable, then you cannot move. Even your body becomes not so flexible. So I think that flexibility, that nature obliges us to get out of our comfort zones, and sometimes we forget that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Thank you so much, San. It's been a huge pleasure. No, it's been
so much.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, Dinis. Thank you.
No, we'll come back to the new projects. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be back.